Introducing Jerald David Winston, owner of Pangea AV, a production specialist with a passion for helping people communicate and educate through great events. With a background as a long lens camera operator for film productions and corporate events, Jerald's skills extend beyond a remote drone pilot utilizing his, 107A cert. He firmly believes in the impact of a great production on the hearts and minds of audiences. Pangea AV is the culmination of all the shows that helped him become the specialist he is today. Tune in to hear more about Jerald's insights on production and event planning and the power of communication. 1, 2, 3, welcome to Eventus 365, the podcast that's all about corporate events and the magic behind the scenes. I'm your host, Yanique DaCosta, and I am excited to take you on a journey through the world of corporate events. But before we dive in, let's talk about the stress of creating marketing material for your events. We all know how tough it can be when deadlines are tight and resources are limited, but guess what? YKMD Visual Communications has got your back. Our design firm specializes in working with corporate event professionals just like you, and we're here to help take the stress out of creating stunning graphics for your event. Our team of expert designers can deliver custom brand compliant designs in just 12 hours. So whether you need branding, signage, marketing materials, or anything else, YKMD's got you covered. Okay, now that that's done, let's start the show. Welcome, Jerald. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on Eventus 365. Can you tell us the story behind creating Pangea AV and what inspired you to start this journey in the world of event production?
I guess I'd have to say live event itself, I kind of stumbled into. I was doing in-house electrical.
Like a lot of people.
Yeah, and it was like, I think it was like 3 a.m. and I was like, I'm going to pull over real quick and get a drink and gas up. And when I go inside to pay, the guy in front of me just happened to be someone I went to high school with. And not like where we were close, but enough to be like, man, you look really familiar. And we do that whole, do I know you kind of dance, when you caught someone's attention. And he's like, oh, I think it was math class together. I don't remember the exact class.
Mm-hmm.
But we started talking, and he owned a company that did all the shows at the Ryman. So he's like, there's really no commitment. You come down if you want to work. And then he kind of went into his little spiel because he liked that. Once I said I was an electrician, he was like, oh, well, that has a lot of value. And he was like, just come down, work a loadout. You get a free T-shirt, watch the band. And he's like, if you never want to do it again, he's like, no hurt feelings. You don't have to quit your current job. So very like high reward, low risk.
Yeah.
So I started doing that pretty much that Friday. I think it was 2 days later. I was at the Ryman doing a loadout, and I was in love with it ever since, and that's what got me into live events. What made me want to kind of go on my own with Pangea AV, because, I did that. I was a stagehand for what I feel is probably way too long. Some people, that's their path, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can be a stagehand for 40, 45 years, whatever, if that's your thing. They're always valued. They're always needed. But for me, I think I did it for like 7 or 8 years where that was like solely my niche. And I didn't realize, honestly, how much of my future I was sacrificing. Because regardless of how much I love being a stagehand at the Ryman, with the history and big acts, small stage, it was a very, very great experience. It didn't empower me to save for retirement. It didn't empower me to save. I'm 299, so no insurance, a broken car, and you're a broke dude.
Yeah.
It's very it doesn't take you long to realize that if you're out here, and I was born here, so home field advantage. When my car broke down, I've got 3 sisters to call. I've got a whole slew of cousins, like 36 cousins. I have 8 nephews.
That's a massive family. I love that.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. So I don't think people realize that's what home field advantage is you don't go homeless when your car breaks. Mm-hmm. That's not true when people move here and they don't have that support network. If you have a good friend, maybe he can come get you, maybe not. Maybe you're on the side of the road missing your gig. So with Pangea AV, it was really a desire for a more concrete future. As I started getting past this, it's just how do I spend my Friday afternoon? This is fun. But when I really started to look at what does it really take to be sustainable, and I really kind of latched onto that word because I kind of feel like I didn't figure that out soon enough. The kids today, I think, have a big advantage because they're thinking about sustainability from the get-go.
Yeah.
There's a solid decade of my life where I wish I had that same word in my, so I started Pangea AV just to kind of change that because I noticed that as an employee, someone else sets my price. As a 1099 contractor, as a business, I set my price. And I just have to deal with who wants to come do business with me. So it's
Yeah,
a little bit of a different game. But that's what started it, in a long-winded
I think
time.
that's fair. I think that's fair. I think there's a lot to unpack there because again, I say this all the time. Anytime I find similarities between me and my guests, I'm always surprised. I don't know why, but I'm always because for me, one of my biggest things about like starting my business, I own a design firm, was that constant cycle of being full-time employed and then being laid off because budget cuts, and then being hired again, or then getting like contract work because they still like your work. They just can't afford to pay you full-time with the benefits and the fun stuff. And it's just like, well, this is inconsistent. Well, how do I fix that? Start a business, control your own future.
And that's really it.
And so that's kind of how I made my own transition as well. But talk to me like as like a production specialist, what do you consider the most important elements that contribute to creating a successful and memorable event?
For me, I know it seems cliche, so I'm trying to like word it in a way that doesn't just seem like some old man.
Sometimes the cliche stuff are the best stuff
in an old movie, but the secret element to our business is time. Everything else is a big second place to time. That's one of the things I really did to take control of my life. Was I started to financially reward clients that were better managers of their time.
Ooh.
That's my number one filter. If you're a chaotic client, if you can't seem to have your stuff together, I tolerate it for a little bit. I'm forgiving and understanding as a person. But as a businessman, if your inability to pre-plan, if your inability to conduct your business negatively impacts my bottom line, i.e., did I lose money because of this? You get 2 times. And then I refer you to someone else. That's when you're kind of on shaky ground. If I won't refer you to someone, that means you're not what I consider a sustainable, that you're just in it for the short term. You're reacting to the market. Your clients aren't as submitted as I need at my level. At our level, I feel that we're here in Nashville, we're really striving to prove ourselves as a top tier city. We want to host the Olympics. We want to host the Super Bowl. So I think we're in that point where here in this city, we're not playing around anymore. So clients that don't want to have it together, they really need to when you come, or you might find yourself in like a Holiday Inn, not the Opulent.
Well, see, now I
because
need
even
to
the venues are doing it.
Now I need to run it back. Like, what do you quantify, or how do you qualify someone who is not chaotic? What are you looking for as a vendor to partner with an event planner when you're looking for your ideal client?
The ideal client is, and it takes a couple of things that I get why some clients can't replicate this. Because the ideal client is someone who's doing repeat business with their client. Because that's what leads to having it really down. This isn't their first time. This isn't their first time with that individual group of whether it's a corporate entity or it's broadcasting and it's sports teams, whatever. What I've noticed is the people that really have it down pat are the people who are like, this is what we do every day. When I go and do PA work for American Idol is where I really see it in sync. ABC really has a tight machine, and they really know how to do all the planning on the front end, so you're not scrambling on the back end, which means you don't just plan for plan A, but you budget for plan B as well. You go ahead and get those quotes for the backup. You go ahead and you don't just have his name sitting on a sticker board, but you line it up. And they take preparedness very seriously. They take those budget items very seriously, because you can pay a little more in the front end to have consistent performers, or you can pay inconsistently on the back end. Say you pay, whether it's PA, say you pay them a lower weight or whatever. You save some money on the front end. Your boss is impressed. Excel sheet numbers in the green. It's great. But on the back end, the guy who didn't have training, or the person that didn't have whatever, was late, stumbled, hit a camera, boom, someone has to pay $1,500 deductible. That savings is now gone. That little special credit you got on the front end is now going to be a negative on the back end. And what I've realized is if I'm dealing with clients that, one, are dealing with repeat clients themselves, it means I know they're doing something right. I've noticed some clients are always dealing with a new client. So I have to think to myself, like, why? Is that a good reason? As some people are ladder climbers and they're just moving up super fast. And so they'll be doing well and doing well with new clients. But some people also are just always trying to just replace the client from the show that caught fire last time. So by seeking time, when clients reach out to me, I mainly deal with the people side of things, referral list or providing camera operators or just being a camera operator myself. The best product I sell is myself.
Mhm.
But what it comes down to is when they call me, if they can call me at least 3 weeks to 30 days out, that's when I know you're taking the time element seriously. If they're calling in live events less than that 30-day window, really less than that 3-week window, I know like either A, you just got this client, something changed up, we should be able to book labor and stuff like that about 30 days out. And if you're able to do that, or at least a lot of the big boy repeat clients should be able to. And if you're able to do that, that's how you get the best guys. Because if you're not booking a certain level out, the best are busy. If you're booking labor by doing cattle calls, just a max text message out to 100 individuals, well, then you're getting those that were sitting on the couch who had the time to respond.
That just stressed me out.
Oh yeah, it's too much. It's not the way to do it. So if I can see that they respect time, then I know they're going to have the other elements in place because time is so tightly attached to the budget and that monetary incentive we're all working. Along with the human component, which means when things are properly planned, people aren't stressed out. I don't see that desperation or that pain and angst. It's kind of like when someone's cooking food, you want all that love and positive energy to go into that food. Same thing, if people are happy and they're doing their job and they feel safe and provided for, that love and energy is going to go into your show. I think all that energy transference is very real for live events.
Oh yeah, no, been there, done that. Energy transfer is completely a real thing, positive and or negative. On that note, can you share a specific example of a challenge that you had while working at an event and how you worked on and how you kind of worked to overcome it and like whatever obstacle it is to still deliver like an outstanding production?
I think one of the things that's hardest is to remain hospitable and keep hospitality at the forefront. I think sometimes in live events, we forget that we are part of the hospitality business a lot, especially with the corporate side of things. We're in a hotel. So for me, one of my more recent shows, and I'll leave the names out of it or whatever, because it's not a blame game. It's just problems and solutions. How I kind of do it. But they showed up and I was supposed to be setting up 3 cameras that day. And this is for a big multi-million-dollar show. This isn't some little whatever. Not that it matters. Little show, big show. They should all say white glove treatment. But they show up and they're like, all right, here's all your stuff. And, it's a lot of stuff. So I'm not the guy who checked it in either. So I don't know how the process went. But I only get one real camera. The rest is bits and pieces. This part doesn't work. The tripod doesn't tighten, little things like that. Dealing with all that, it really makes me remind myself that I have to be patient because, you just want to have your stuff. You just want to set up and move forward. And it took like almost 2 full days for us to get the other 2 cameras from that venue. And so during that.
When was the event?
Well, we had a 2-day setup.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
Yeah. Luckily. I mean, really luckily. And even then, I was even a little bit.
Lucky, or did you plan for it?
I want to say they planned for it because this was a big show. Because even after the 2-day setup, we had a full day of rehearsals. So this is a prime example of giving that buffer to allow for those inconsistent things that aren't really my fault. It's not the client's fault, And it took that much time because every time we thought, because it also wasn't like, hey, we're missing 2 whole cameras. It's like, hey, we're missing a tripod. As I'm discovering the pieces, it's as they're coming up and telling me. And luckily we're in Nashville, so we have all the local vendors here, which is a real privilege because then when you need something, the guy is just driving 20 minutes down. It's not like you're out of state and it's going to take 8 days. So that's another thing about knowing that sensitivity is, I guess, leveraging your communal strengths is what that falls in. But it was just really hard because I really just wanted them to like swap things. It's like this particular vendor was playing a game where it's like, they're out of stuff. They didn't want to tell you they're out of stuff. They piecemealed this together, but they had a shop guy do it, not a cameraman. So he just saw a tripod, put a tripod in a case. He didn't like QC it or bench it. Keeping positive in those, that's really my solution is keeping positive. Because all you can do is pass the note, hey, this is missing, I need to know. Boss says, okay, I'm going to place the order. Hopefully we'll get it soon. And it's not his fault when it doesn't come. And it's not the poor shop guy. You know what I mean? He's not a camera guy. It's a Sunday. I'm sure someone just said, grab this and put it over there. So who really knows where that breaking command comes from? But I do find that is a prime example of when having that time really saved our bugs because I feel like that client was not going to be happy with one camera. It was not going to be a solution they would settle for. This room was huge. It had a giant 60-foot LED wall. We had LED outboards and screens. Like video is a huge component of this. And without iMag, you lose a lot of something. It doesn't feel like the Grammys. It doesn't feel like those big spectacles we're used to. I hope that answered that.
No, it did. And I think it was also a really great transition into like kind of talking about the rapid evolution of technology that's happening, not just in the event industry, but just in the world, right? Like, how do you stay ahead of the curve and ensure that you're utilizing the latest tools and technologies in your productions? Because, I mean, it even sounds like when you're like assembling your toolkit, there's some struggles there.
There is. Our projects are so big that we are very dependent on each other. Very, very dependent on each other. If one component starts to fail, we're all going to feel it. We don't really live in a bubble in live events. When for me, I think that's why I named the company Pangea AV, is because I wanted everyone, whether your video, lighting, whether your background is this or that, the whole company's idea is that we all come from the same place. Even our continents used to all be one giant mass, you know? And so keeping that in mind that we're all on the same team, we're all here to get this show done. The show must go on, the old cliche. And so with that in mind, it's just, I think, important for us to realize that keeping pace with technology is really about just keeping connected. You know, again, another of those cliche things, but being connected is a big, important part of what we do. And so I feel like if you're just networking, if you're hanging out, especially with industry professionals that you admire, industry professionals, maybe they're your mentor, maybe they're just someone like, oh, he's doing a job I really like. The more you talk to those people, the more you hang out with them, by default, you're going to get a gear update. You're going to get to learn about the newest tech because that's what that person's doing. So I pretty much just hang out with my mentors. If someone's doing something I want to do, if someone's flying a drone, dude, I'm standing right next to them. I'm that guy asking too many questions until they either give me their phone number or tell me to go on, then I'm being a nuisance. And there is a balance knowing how to approach people to those questions, but it's really just about staying connected. Once you're asking questions and really trying to be a helper, you know, trying to see where people are having problems and see if you can't lighten that load a little bit. That's the other thing. If you're going to take their time by sharing that presence with them, you want to make sure you don't come off as a burden. And I do that by always being a helper. You know, and that way, when I'm hanging out with these people, they just by default, you know, most people in our business on the tech side, you have that legacy knowledge. They love they're going to talk about the new toys. Oh, I just got this and I just got that. Look at this. And when you're hanging out with them, especially outside of show site's great too. The show site, sometimes people are a lot
busy,
a lot going on.
Yeah.
But when you're just hanging out at their house, you go have fun, especially among videographers. You go have a fun shoot day where you bring out the drones, you bring out your camera stuff. You get to relax. They get to teach you their techniques. You get to get on not just the same page with technology, but also the same page verbally. You start to really understand, are we defining excellence the same way? Because I feel that's another key component about whether it's vetting a client or hanging out with coworkers, whatever it is, you do want to make sure you're talking, especially when it comes to how you're grading things. There can be a lot of flux, but when I say something's awesome, I need to know that you also think that's awesome. Otherwise, I might be doing something that's subtly wrong or inconsistent or something that doesn't rise up to your standard. And I think that's important for us all to be on the same page.
It absolutely is. I'm a really big fan of just like mentorship and also like being a part of associations, which I mean, there's other like episodes where we're actually talking. I think if you're familiar with Will Curran, we were actually having a conversation about associations and I'm big on associations, especially when it comes to what I do, graphic designer. I'm big on surrounding myself with people who will hold me to a higher standard so I can continue to move the bar. But I'm just as big on finding myself in places where my clients are so that I can also understand what they're looking for and what they need and how I can use this bar to deliver their bar.
That's important.
So I can appreciate your appreciation for wanting to utilize a network of people to continue to learn and grow and figure out which way to go. And I think it's also a good segue into like right now, not even right now so much, but I think things are also again evolving.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evolution happening in the event space right now, and I almost feel like there's not enough people talking about how it's actually evolving, because of course from the year that shall not be named, everything kind of just went up and down, and we're not even really sure where to find our heads. Like we don't even have like data or stats to really support any real decisions. It's just like throw it at the wall, see what sticks. And I mean, there is definitely a rise in virtual events, especially with what's happening this year and people's financial situations.
Yeah.
But then there's also a rise in hybrid events because of, people wanting to make things more accessible and more inclusive. But then there's also the different groups of people who are like, bump all of that, give us all live events. All that in mind, what do you think the future holds for virtual and hybrid event formats?
I really like talking about virtual events and hybrids, all of them interconnected, because anything that I think gets the message further, I think is really important and worth investing in. And that's really where I think virtual steps in, because I think some people get too busy thinking like one's going to replace the other. Is it virtual versus live? You're never going to really replace the live event feeling because of the numbers. That energy transfer we talked about, it resonates based on the numbers. 1 million people gathered together has a stronger impact than 5 people. And once you experience that, it seems very obvious, even though we don't necessarily have a way to really directly quantify that. But where I do think where virtual events and hybrid, it's really kind of owned their keep, is in the redundancy. When you're doing conferences for medical professionals, surgeons, pediatrics, people who really do have life and death decisions to make, and they're making those decisions based upon this information. So then I think it's important that no matter where they are, it's not about, does virtual and hybrid empower you to sell more tickets? Yes, but it's not really about the more money that opens up for you. Does virtual and hybrid give you the ability to pretty much record every session? That way it's on demand. Yes, but that's not really what it's about. Again, it's really about, though, the main underlying support system is about redundancy. So even after lockdown is over, I kept doing virtual events. I kept doing hybrid events. And one of the key reasons is because we did this Texas school superintendents. It's TASBO, TASBO. They were going to have a live event, and then that huge winter storm, just blanketed everything in snow. As Ted Cruz was busy hauling off to Jamaica or wherever for his family vacation, his whole state was under snow. And so our show was only able to go on because of virtual, because of that presence. Yeah. So not only was my gig not canceled, which is yay, that's again the sustainable part. The reason why virtual and hybrid events are more sustainable is because you're planning, you're preparing for success by putting in that redundant layer. In America, we're all about insurance. 1/3 of your money most certainly needs protecting the other 2/3. And if it's not, you're being negligent. And you don't have to be, you're allowed to be.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree. I actually don't disagree with that too much. I'm big on a lot of different. I'm actually big on insurance. Actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't think I realized how big I was, because my mom makes fun of me because I have insurance on way too many things, and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Because if it breaks, I don't want to buy it all over again." And she's like, "Yeah, but you're also paying like $10 a month, like to." And I'm like, I mean, it also costs like $4,000. What's $10 a month?
Well, and what you can do too on that particular instance, if you want to make your mom happy, but also utilize having that 1/3 protect the other 2/3. I have something for small value items if they're less than like $2,000 or $3,000. So like the drone, I get the insurance through the company, mainly because they even have flyaway. Even if this thing just takes off, they'll send me a new one. And I pay a little deductible, but so that's worth it. Big fan on that one. But for like my iPod or my Sony Walkman or little things that are just $200, what I have is just a bank account that has $3,000. And that's my insurance. I paid that $10 to myself.
I think that's fair.
Untouched. It has to be untouched though. But that's what you do. You become your own insurance company, and that stops because there's certain items where the insurance is kind of a hustle. If you do the math, if I go longer than 8 months, I've paid you more than.
I mean, I've heard. So I live in Jamaica, to give you context.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you. I think so too. I've heard that in Jamaica, and it's mind-boggling for me, but I've been told, and I don't know if this comes from a place of ignorance or not, so don't take it like as law, but I've heard that having homeowners insurance here is a waste of money, because if, let's say, your house burns down, the time it's going to take you to actually file that claim, you could have saved up to buy a new house and moved on. And I'm like,
oh, it takes that long.
I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I was like, I don't agree, because, and then apparently homeowners insurance only covers like the walls, not the contents of the house. And I was like, this sounds right. This feels like a lie.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And in my head, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I feel like this is a very specific situation, a very specific person's experiences, because they did not get the right homeowners insurance. Because there's nothing more than, this also sounds really bad. So I lived in Fort Lauderdale, and regular situation when you live, I don't know why, but regular situation when you live downtown in Fort Lauderdale is car break-ins. And Atlanta too. I got robbed at gunpoint.
Oh, dang.
Mind you, and listen, and I am living in like these very seemingly opulent areas, but apparently, that's where you go to steal. I mean, do you steal from poor people? It doesn't make sense. They have what you have, so why bother? So, let's come to this area where like it seems like these people have a lot. And then sometimes I remember when they stole my car, and I was like, I thought it was a joke. I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah, you thought your toad was down the corner.
I'm like, bro, I was like, I have no money. I was parked right next to a Bugatti. And I was like, and my car is the car you want? What's happening? I was like, how hard I have to work to buy my little like, no, it wasn't a BMW. It was like my little Mercedes. And this is what you, seriously? I was like, look at me. It was hilarious. But
I'm definitely sorry that happened to you.
As you can tell, I'm kind of over it. I had a lot of trauma around it when it happened, but I had insurance. And when I say insurance, I mean like for all the things. I mean, like my car was kind of like a driving like closet. So there were like unnecessarily expensive shoes, ridiculously expensive purses, like I always had emergency stash money in like the center console. Like, so all of this is gone. And then I'm like, oh, in the car. And I had gap insurance on the car. So like it was really just a minor inconvenience with a little bit of trauma. But like, the insurance kind of said, I got all my stuff back, brand spanking new. Like the car was good. I didn't even care. I was like, whatever. All of that.
Good insurance company is worth its weight. It really is.
Yeah, no, I am definitely a fan. Let me rein us back here a little bit because I can take us off into the deep end of nothingness. Can you kind of talk to us, like in your experience, what are some of the creative ways to incorporate sustainable practices into event production? And like, how has your company embraced these initiatives? Because I mean, you were talking about having a sustainable career, but what about producing sustainable events?
So I think, and there's different levels of sustainable, right? You have environmental sustainability, you have economic sustainability, and you have emotional sustainability. Because you want your events to be challenging enough where no one gets complacent, and whether visually when they're just kind of participating in the event or even when they're working. And that's why our events really kind of just constantly evolve. They don't really get static. They just kind of build off each other. And I think that's one of the keys to being sustainable is being mindful and being intentional in balancing these three segments. I think it becomes too much for a lot of people, and a lot of people cannot pull this off, which is why we don't see huge shining examples. Because I think a lot of people will sacrifice one for the other, but without all three, you don't really get to a sustainable model. Not a truly sustainable model.
Yeah.
I focused on finances first because I was poor. And that's what I had to focus on.
Yeah.
I guess I was poor in one way, poor like with actual cash flow money.
Yeah, I know.
Because of my
I don't know
family.
why I knew what you meant, but I feel like because I knew, other people knew.
And I think people forget that. So like you don't have to have a lot of money for a mechanic if your cousin's a mechanic. and is willing to help you out. You have to answer the phone. You have to have that buy-in. I think for a company to really be sustainable, they have to keep their people foremost. And if you're keeping your people foremost, you're also keeping their children foremost. I think a lot of times they just want to be like, oh, it's work, work, work. We're all family here. It's like, but I have a big family, and it's not a light lift. What I'm asking companies to do by being a conscientious provider and to provide a safe workplace is not a small ask. And it's why so many companies fail to provide. But in order to be sustainable, I think they have to put a lot of investment on planning. Just like I said before, if you plan well, not only can you kind of Lego your events, knowing that you're going to want this simple model for this first year to grow and build, but you don't want to scrap the old model. You want to be able to use that as a template and then build off it. So you're still becoming
like
new
a
and
learning
fresh.
experience.
Exactly. But also just on an environmental level. So that way you're not throwing away that whole old set. And especially you see this in print and graphics. Exactly. Theater is really great about it. The set for this will turn into the set of this and the set of this. Like they don't throw nothing away, which is awesome. Not nothing. They throw something away.
But no, I know what you mean. Like they're very good at being fiscally responsible and environmentally conscious.
That is. And so I think live event could get some of that. I would be excited to see, especially more with intent to reuse, like even graphics and graphic design, where you see like every show is pretty much they trade out everything, whether it's the colors or because the print and the graphics gets too worn. I think if they invested a little bit more in the front end, got a higher quality graphic that sustained that, took care of it. And there is a balancing because where's it shipped and where's it logistics?
I was about to say, even that I don't even want to call it the graphics then, because then it's really about the production of the graphics. So
the actual signage, I guess, is the right word. Yeah.
Yeah.
To upgrade the sticker quality and the actual components. Because what I see them do is they get them, they look great, they put them out, and they all go to the dumpster.
Oh,
it'd be great
every time
if there is a better way to reuse these materials. And I think we're really close.
And maybe it's not even printing them. Maybe it's using digital.
And that's the key. In the future, I think they're getting to a point where either through LED walls or through projection, they're getting close to eventually we will paint everything with light and not. And I think that will have a big environmental sustainable impact as electricity becomes easier to produce, especially here in Tennessee, because we have a lot of hydroelectric using solar more. If we are able to successfully get off our dependence of coal, allow that to fall back to a redundant safeguard system rather than a primary keystone system, the way it plays today, I feel that when we paint things with electricity, we'll be able to replace that energy loss quicker and more cost effective, cheaper. And at the same time, we won't be producing this huge amounts of waste. And that's the environmental part. But even things as far as being able to co-op more as an industry, I think as AI takes off and we get better at crowdsourcing our mathematics, we'll also get better at crowdsourcing our work. So farmers do this all the time. Restaurants
crowdsourcing our what?
Our workload and our workflow.
Oh, sorry. You cut out and I didn't hear.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. Okay. And so it's one of those things like farms already do this. Restaurants already do that. A restaurant, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but they might have 3 different brands of restaurants. You don't know they're all connected, but all that pre-ordered food sits in one warehouse. Yeah. So that way everyone's not having to just, I order 10 hamburgers, I order 10 hot dogs, this guy orders 10 chicken, and then one truck's driving all that. No, one truck brings it all to one center place that's closer. And that's really the power of regional marketing, why it's better to have a bunch of microbreweries rather than one massive brewery that ships it everywhere, because the environmental weight of the trucks is really heavy, the exhaust and all that. The closer you are to what you consume, geographically, the more sustainable it is.
Yeah.
So you may not be able to get strawberries year round, but you won't have a truck doing all that work and spreading all that gas just to have strawberries. Once we have electric vehicles that are fully sustainable, i.e. even the battery is made in a sustainable way, which right now they're not. There's a lot of heavy metals and stuff like that. So they're sustainable-ish. But once we have that lifelong battery that, hopefully, within 10 years, fingers crossed, Mr. Musk, if he can pop that out, that'd be fantastic. But once we have that, we can take better control of that. I think until now, though, I think the best we can do is be sustainable emotionally. Because that's the cost-effective one, because it doesn't cost anything to care about someone. It doesn't cost anything to think about a minute of where do they come from. Great leaders don't just hire great people. They know how to see the greatness in people. And I think that's really important because everyone has a place. Whether or not you can see it, that's really your failing as a leader, not their failing as a follower.
I mean, I think you just touched on something there for me, like when you said everybody has a place.
Yeah.
And that for me was a touch point for like talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like,
Yeah.
can you discuss the importance of DEI in the event industry and how, Pangea AV is working to promote DEI in productions?
So I think one, the name itself kind of promotes it a little bit. Right off, you can just see the logo and be like, oh, this guy, you kind of get it. We all come from the same place. It's not hyperactive subliminal. It's very kind of on the nose a little bit. But for me, it comes down to solving problems. That's really my number one goal. I'm very committed to that. So it didn't take long. So I say to say that I'm not some big noble person. I don't have some big holier than thou, whatever. I didn't make these choices because they were morally right. I made the choice to be diverse because it was a faster path to more sustainable and more realistic and affordable solutions. When you have a diverse background of people, whether it's your brain trust, whether it's your buddies that you're calling for advice, because I think one of the most important choices you make is who you allow into your little brain trust. We all have buddies and people that we hang out with, but then there's people that we go to for advice, whether they're our mentors, our parents, our doctors, rabbis, priests, whatever it is. I think once you're at that point in life where you're like, I need that 5 or 6 people I can call with like real life questions. And it helps if they're not always your parents, because your parents have this emotional bias that's really hard to get around. They want you to be safe.
Parents are fun. Yeah, always.
Yeah, it's hard to get them on board with take a risk, invest all your money into a company.
Been there, done that.
Exactly. So you get that. So I think if you're a problem solver, it's hyper important to make sure you're dealing with a very diverse group set, to make sure, and you have to put some effort into that, because your group set often is just a reflection of where you happen to come up. A lot of times our friends aren't made with intention. They're made by proximity. I sat next to you in class. I bumped into you at the store. I kind of like had so I think once you're at a certain point where you're like us, where you're taking control of your life and you're like, I want to start a business in order to have control and to be empowered. That also comes with the responsibility of recognizing of what do I want to empower this world to be? Do I want to make sure everyone feels safe and provided for? Do I want to make sure that we're making sure everyone gets that point across? Because when they do, there's a really big win. As the internet's already shown us, crowdsourcing math and crowdsourcing workloads is really successful. It really, really works. And it's no different when you start intentionally making friends that are different than you, which is kind of like a little bit of a hurdle. African Americans are only 18% of the population in America. So if I just want to go and make more diverse friends, I have to actually go out there and really find people with real problems and then help them. Because you just can't settle up and be like, hey, I want to be your buddy. Oh, that's weird. I'm going to like wander off. But if you're like, hey, I see you have a problem, but if I see you have a problem, you want to learn this, you want to learn how to build camera, you want to learn this, then you just go out and you try and connect them in a way so they help them solve their problem. And then you have this organic feedback loop that helps, because you help them solve their problem. They're going to answer the phone when you're like, hey, I have this problem. And that's what I did. And it took like maybe 8 or 9 years before I really had those 8 or 9 people where I'm like, I feel like my brain trust is a superpower. I feel like between military background, religious background, people that are full on anti everything, people that are.
You got to have a little bit of those just to like, poke the bear, like, what is?
You do need someone questioning things. Otherwise, everyone's like, well, what, you need. And also, it's just like that, too, because too many times do I hear people say, oh, that's common sense. Common sense does not exist. It's common to you and your background and your exposure and your biases and your trauma. But unless you're talking to your brother who shared the room with you, it's probably going to be different for someone else. There is no real common sense. So you have to kind of, and that comes back to where it comes back to communication, make sure you're speaking the same language as far as managing, those kind of expectations, because you're better off not having those kind of expectations. You're better off just taking that time to hear their story and figure out what they really bring to the table. They just say, oh, go do this. And you should have known that that's common sense. That's not really helpful. It doesn't really work. But I do think that some of the initiatives that we're doing is really just about making sure that people know they're invited. Because I think it's hard. I'm an extrovert, so it's not really hard for me to just walk up and start a conversation with somebody. But I think it's really hard for a lot of people. So I think it's mainly about making sure that when you see someone sitting alone, you let them know there's a seat at your table and they can come over. You don't try and crowd them or say you need to do this or whatever. Just let them know the invitation is open. Let them know that their presence is desired. Let them know that their presence is valued. Because whoever comes up with the solution first can make a boatload of money. There are some very profitable problems out there that if you can solve, you don't have to live your life this way anymore. You can straight upgrade. And that's what we're all doing. I call it exploration problem solving. And that's what I learned early on. I learned that when all my little buddies looked like me, I was getting the same answer back.
Yeah.
Once I changed that
that's
up,
a fact. That's a
yeah,
fact. If you don't step outside of your comfort zone, there's no way to kind of like learn about the alternate perspective. And
that's it. And
you just all sit there going, well, that's the answer. And never
that's it. And you get a lot of yes men too. You get people just telling you yes because you're the guy buying it. You don't want that either. That's where the poke the bear guy comes
don't
back.
mean to, right? They also don't even mean to. It's just instinctual.
That's right.
Or you guys have the same cultural background, and so it just happens.
And it's the energy transfer too. The energy transfer where they just like the feeling of when we're all in agreement. You get this heartwarming kind of yay, we're all agreeing and this is awesome. But there's a prize at the other end of that little bit of intellectual struggle. And that prize is a better understanding, and I think we all prosper from.
I think that's a really great note to actually end on, because I love that. I think that'll give our listeners something really awesome to think about, because it gave me some awesome things to think about. You should see I was like writing my notes, and like then I started typing things, and I'm like, what am I doing? Well, focus. Like bird. Anyway, before I let you go, I do have one question for you. What do you think, like what's one event you think that all event professionals should attend at least once?
Now, this is me going like full nerd. Because I know we have some big boy shows like LEDI. Let's say that proper.
Always tell us what the acronyms mean, because not everybody knows.
I think LDI, I'm not a lighting guy, so I don't remember. I think it's light design.
Okay.
Forget institute or something like that.
Okay.
I'm not good about knowing and then Infocom, I don't know what that stands for either. Probably should. But that's a general
maybe information technology. Yeah. Okay.
That's the one where everyone goes to get all their gear and stuff. But those are like the second tier ones. The number one, and this is weird, some people won't necessarily think of this, but it's DEF CON in Vegas. Because
DEF CON?
Yeah, and it's for cybersecurity. It's the one that, so like you can be a better meeting planner by going to Infocom. You can buy better gear and better cameras. You can come up with really interesting lighting designs at LDI. But cybersecurity touches on all of us. It's one thing that no matter what part you're in on, you're involved in it. If you're having live event, you need cybersecurity because people are bringing their cell phones. That's part of that, making people feel safe.
Yeah.
You see it on HBO's TV show, Silicon Valley. The little nerd guys get in there and they put in this little thing. It's a stingray device that captures people's data in order to increase their user numbers or whatever. I personally have watched people get arrested for corporate espionage on show floor, where the feds come right in, swoop them. Cybersecurity is real. And I think, especially in times like now, America seems to be in a preamble for war. So with that cybersecurity, and we also have like 14 ongoing, declared by the White House, cybersecurity conflicts in process right now, where our live events aren't under attack by little 14-year-olds in their Honda in the parking lot. This is an entire battalion of 30 plus odd, takes 3 shifts in a row, cybersecurity military personnel. So I think we all have to take that seriously, and our government does, which is why we don't see a lot of them, because they're doing their job. But the more we're aware of those kind of things, and once you see that really all it is having the right phone numbers and knowing who to call for those solutions, it's really not even that hard. But if you go to DEF CON, you learn everything about how to secure your hotels better, how to do more secure payment options, and how to have your websites, especially as things go hybrid. A lot of the ticket sales and all the registrations done through websites. And that really needs to be really, really foundationally important, that security is in all those conversations. Because I think there's some issues too, where even on the disruptor side, You want to make sure your events can't be disrupted. You want to make sure that your hybrid meetings actually go through and that they're not just blocked out and you're not open up to like a DDoS attack. There's tons of people out there that know more than this, but when you go watch DEF CON, it's also highly entertaining. These guys are able to do some amazing things. And then right on the back end, they talk about how they're solving it. And the more I hang out with computer programmers and stuff like that, the more I started being less biased about problem solving, because it really is mathematical. It doesn't take long for you to realize that you either want to solve the problem or you want to blame someone for the problem.
Yeah.
Get away from blame. Blame is for the historians and the story writers and the reporters. If you're on the ground, you should only be concerned with solving the problem. And I hope that helps. So DEF CON is my vote.
I love that. It sounds like an event I would actually want to attend.
It's so much fun.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for your time and all your background and all the information. I know the listeners, woo, I know the listeners are going to love it. And I look forward to hearing everybody's comments and feedback.
That's awesome. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Same. Have a great day.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Aventus 365. We hope you enjoyed listening and learning something new today. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to help event professionals discover us. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and sign up for our newsletter for behind-the-scenes content and updates on upcoming events. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, or just want to say hello, you can reach us at info@aventus365.com. We love hearing from our listeners. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Aventus 365.